Hello Internet, my name is Addison and I like to talk about comics. Today I'm going to be doing something different than I usually do on this channel, and I'm going to be talking about a full trade paperback as opposed to a single issue new release. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about the first volume of Grant Morrison's run on Doom Patrol. Why am I switching everything up, you might ask? Well, let me tell you. Back in April at Emerald City Comic Con, DC Comics announced that they would be starting a new imprint called Young Animal, and that imprint would fall under the creative direction of Gerard Way. On top of that, the flagship title for the imprint is going to be a relaunch of the series Doom Patrol, and that Gerard Way would be writing for the series. Now, I was really excited about this because I've been a huge fan of Gerard Way for a very, very long time. However, while I knew of Doom Patrol, I didn't really know anything about the team. So I started doing some research, and that very quickly led to me purchasing and reading the first volume of the most successful run of the series, which was Grant Morrison's run on the series. So I wanted to go ahead and share with you and everyone else that may not know that much about Doom Patrol what I found out and my experience reading the first volume. Today specifically, I'm just going to be talking about the first volume is 6 issues long. I'm going to be talking about the first issue today, and I'm ready to let's just do it. Let's just make it happen. So the first obvious question is, who are the Doom Patrol? And the Doom Patrol are a superhero team where the characters are all either like basically cursed, tortured, alienated, end up becoming ostracized by society because of their unique abilities. The Doom Patrol first appeared in issue 80 of My Greatest Adventure in 1963. 5 issues later, the title of the comic was changed to the Doom Patrol and ran for 5 more years, ending with issue number 121, and the entire team was killed off at the end of the series. And this was the first time something like that had ever been done in comics, where an entire team was just killed off. They either were sacrificing themselves against their greatest enemy. I don't know who it is. I can't remember. 9 years later, a new version of the Doom Patrol was created by Paul Kupperberg and Joe Staton, and it appeared in Showcase number 94. In 1987, the team got its own series being written by Paul Kupperberg and Joe Staton, and they ran for 18 issues until Grant Morrison came on as writer. Grant Morrison then wrote 45 issues, ending on number 63, and was eventually replaced by Rachel Rolick, who wrote the series until 1995, ending with issue number 87. In 2001, the Doom Patrol was relaunched as part of the DC Universe, but only ran for 22 issues before finally getting canceled. A year after that, the Doom Patrol was given a full reboot, wiping out all previous continuity, but only ran for 18 issues before finally getting canceled. Then, in 2009, the series was given a new relaunch after all continuity had been restored through Infinite Crisis, but then again only running for 22 issues before finally being canceled. So that's just a brief history of the team's publication history. I just want to share that with you to give you an idea of the sort of start-stop nature that the title has received over the team, has received over the years, and expressing again the significance of Grant Morrison's run on the series. On top of that, this is, I believe, one of the first major works of Grant Morrison in the comics industry. Before this, he worked on Animal Man, which was another title that didn't have a lot of weight with it before he got onto it. And then after that, he hopped onto this. And then I don't know if it launched his career, but definitely gave him a lot of traction in the area. So for the significance of this video, and I'm going to talk about who the team is in regards specifically to Grant Morrison's run, as he really did set the standard for what the Doom Patrol is, and it's relevant. I'm not going to talk about all the other incarnations of the team. So first off, the leader of the team being the Chief. Real name being Niles Calder. He is a paraplegic and also a super genius. Also has the best superpower, which is lots of money. Secondly, the only, if not one of two, if not the only consistent member of the team is Robot Man, also known as Cliff Steele, who is a former race car driver who had his body completely destroyed in a car racing accident and had to have his brain implanted into a robot. Cliff Steele also suffers a lot from depression, in this series at least. I couldn't say about other versions of the team how it does, but it plays a significant role in this. Major depression from and PTSD from his accident. Third up on the team, we have Negative Man, who I think is also another one of the characters who appears regularly in every incarnation of the team. The real name is Larry Trainer, was a pilot who flew through a radioactive field like superheroes wind up doing, and ended up becoming radioactive himself, so he has to cover his entire body in these specially chemically treated bandages to prevent anyone else from being exposed to his radioactive nature. And on top of that, he has the ability to send forth a negative spirit or a negative entity, a negative being of some sort that can fly around and destroy things and pow pow pow. But when he sends that negative entity out, he has no control over his own body at the time, or is at least very, very weak. And he cannot have the entity outside of his body for longer than 60 seconds without risking possibly dying. Specifically in this series, you'll see that the Negative Man, negative entity, ends up bonding with Larry Trainer and a female named Dr. something. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. And the character has hermaphroditic qualities. I don't think other versions, like subsequent versions of the Doom Patrol, they have that. I think it's just Larry Trainer. But which I think is kind of unfortunate, because I think it makes it one of the most interesting aspects of this comic book and for the character itself. And for the sake of this story, at the beginning of this, the negative entity and the Larry Trainer have been separated due to a major comic book event that occurred prior to the start of this story. Next we have Tempest, also known as Joshua Clay, a member of one of the previous runs of Doom Patrol that had the ability to blast kinetic energy out of his hands. For the sake of this story, he has retired and he will be acting as the team's physician from now on. There is Dorothy Spinner, the name is a pun off Dorothy Gale from The Wizard of Oz. You'll notice that the character wears a Dorothy outfit for a large portion of it. She has the ability to summon or manifest her imaginary friends into reality. On top of that, she is super ugly. Just looks like she looks like an ape. Then there's Crazy Jane, whose real name is Kay Chalice. However, Kay Chalice was heavily abused as a child by her father, and this caused her to create split personalities. Jane being the most prominent dominant of the personalities, but she ends up having 64 different personalities. Following the events of the crossover event that I mentioned previously, all of her different personalities now have superpowers attached to them. Each one has a unique personality, unique superpower. So first, on the subject of Grant Morrison. He's a very well-known author. He's done lots of very influential. He's in the industry through and through. I'm not going to go talk too much about his career and the way he writes. I'm just going to say that he's known for being a little eccentric, and his writing is a little, I guess, counterculture is, I think, the way Wikipedia described it. My personal experience with Grant Morrison, reading his stuff, was the very first thing I ever read was Final Crisis, which, as far as I'm concerned, was a total cluster show. Anyway, so that put a really bad taste in my mouth. I've never really seen it. After that, I was like, well, screw that. I'm not reading any Grant Morrison stuff ever. But actually, and that's what I thought was the first thing I had read about from Grant Morrison, but much later I found out that one of the very first comics I ever actually bought, down at the local comic book store, Ground Zero Comics, just down the block from where I lived. I used to go down there when I was like 11, 12 years old, and I'd go through the 25-cent bins, and one of the comics I grabbed was one of his first Batman stories called Batman Gothic, and it was just single issue. I had the second issue out of 5, or maybe the first one, and I read that, and so I don't know. He's actually one of the first people I ever read, which is kind of cool. Retrospectively, still kind of a weird, super weird story, but it was pretty good. So when I finally got the chance to read something that Grant Morrison was like known for, and I took the initiative to actually go read it, and I was super excited. And after I read this book, I was like, okay, now I finally get Grant Morrison. I get why he's such a big deal, because it's really awesome and it is weird and it's so good. So good. So today I'm going to be doing this in 6 parts. Today I'm going to be talking about just the very first issue, and I'm going to do each of the subsequent issues after that. Just because I feel like this will go on maybe a little too long if I talk about the entire series as issue, or the entire trade as thoroughly as I'd like to. And I'm getting ready to read the second volume, and I might do a series for that as well. I would like to do all 6 before the launch of Doom Patrol in September, but I don't think that's going to happen. One of the great things about this book, and a lot of the Vertigo trades that you get, and I don't know, maybe it's just me. I've heard some people complain about the paper in these trades, but I love it. I love that it's not the high glossy stuff that all the comics are being printed on now, because it just smells like a comic book, and it totally takes me right back to the 25-cent bins from when I was like 12 years old. And that's, I don't know, maybe it's a little weird, but the smell of comic books is like a big thing for me. It really, I don't know, there's something special about it. Anyway, opening up to the very first page, the very first issue opens up on a nightmare. And I think that is a great metaphor for the series and the team and what they're experiencing as individuals and as a team. It really sets off the tone for the entire series. And also keep a watch on this page right here, this set of panels, and because it's going to kind of come back around at the end of the story here. And then following the nightmare, once Cliff wakes up, we see that he is checked into a psychiatric hospital, and later we'll talk about how it's revealed that he actually checked himself into the hospital, which is something that I think is significant. I'll talk about that when we get to that part of the story. The next scene takes us to a more of a medical hospital, and is the introduction of Eleanor Poole, but also there's a real quick, was one little frame cutaway to the janitor picking up, can't quite tell what it is, but he sticks it in his pocket, and that becomes significant in later issues. All right, from there we're introduced to the Chief and Joshua Clay. They are hanging out inside the old Doom Patrol headquarters. I can't remember if they're moving or if they're refurbishing. I think they're moving. From here is where it is revealed that Cliff actually checked himself into the mental health facility, and I think that's significant because, like I mentioned previously, that Cliff Steele is the one character. I really should look it up. One of 2, if not the only character that is consistent throughout every incarnation of the Doom Patrol. And he's really the alpha of the team, and he's the leader. And I think it's significant to show that the leader, this alpha character, took the initiative to check himself into a mental health facility. And I think that says something, makes a statement about the courage and the bravery that it does take to admit that you need help. I think that's, I don't know, just a really important message that you know, asking for help and getting help, even though he's very reluctant and he still fights with the faculty and doesn't get help, or is resistant to change. I think that's a strong, important message to send, that the leader of this team is, you know, was brave enough to go get help. Then throughout the rest of this, it kind of establishes that the chief is forming a new Doom Patrol, and that he's kind of revealing that he's got these big plans. He's going to make them happen. So and we'll see what ends up happening with that and how that plays out down the line. From here, the story takes us back to the mental health facility, where we're introduced to Will Magnus, the creator of the Metal Men, and also the creator of Cliff's Body, who starts talking, and they start having a conversation and discussing, you know, banter about this and that and about the state of things. And this actually has my favorite panel in the entire issue. It's like the middle panel. It's actually two panels, and it's just Cliff and Will Magnus standing and sitting in the room, and there's the split there that separates the two characters, and Cliff is encased in light and Will Magnus is sitting in the dark. And I love the split, not only because it communicates the passage of time and the sort of silence that's in the resistance of the character to, you know, have a conversation and open up to another person, but and also creates the isolation that Cliff, or like communicates the isolation that Cliff is experiencing and how he's closed himself off. Probably worth mentioning that the previous incarnation of the Doom Patrol team was almost entirely all killed off during the crossover event that DC had just done. So I think that's part of the reason that the character is so negative and keeping people at a distance, whether it's the medical health facility faculty, or Will Magnus himself. And I think that there's good reason, aside from his, you know, just being depressed over his state, over trying to keep people at a distance. And I think this panel just really communicates that sense of isolation that the character is feeling. And if the paneling itself didn't communicate it, then the light and the shadow definitely does. Following that, we're back to the medical facility with Larry Trainor is staying, and Dr. Poole, Eleanor Poole. And we get first introduced to the negative entity, or the negative spirit that possesses Larry Trainor. And this is the first time in the series. They had hinted at it possibly being like sentient unto itself, but this is the first time I think that it's officially confirmed that the entity is an entity and not just an extension of Larry Trainor. Larry Trainor is actually scared of this entity. He doesn't want it to be a part of his life. However, he still cannot resist. Maybe that's, you know, the negative entity tells him to open the window and let him in. Now, the entity would say that he's forcing Larry to do it, but there's also, I'm wondering if it's not a compulsion unto Larry's self to regain that, because, you know, I would assume he has, the power would be addictive, right? Following that, we're back to we're back to Cliff Steele and Will Magnus going on a walkabout throughout the grounds of the mental health facility. Eventually then Cliff, out of frustration for his condition and his conversation with Will Magnus, clearly what's like I feel like a depiction of attempted self-harm, with him cracking his head over and over into the wall, but he doesn't feel anything. And I think that's actually a powerful statement as well, in that about the character, that, you know, because we know that so many people that are experiencing emotional pain that they're having a hard time controlling end up turning to physical pain as either a relief or a distraction or something to a physical like reflection of what they are experiencing on the inside. They can get to now feel it on the outside, and he doesn't have that. He experiences like no physical pain whatsoever, and how alone and isolating that must like make the character feel, which I really liked. And then we're right back into the medical facility with Trainer and Poole and a negative spirit entity, through the conversation between the negative entity and Larry Trainer, you see that the negative entity has the intention to bring the doctor into the situation as well and try to create, I believe it describes it as an alchemical balance or equation of bonding all three of them together as one entity. And that's what ends up happening here, and there's a really beautiful sort of psychedelic geometric design shape. I don't know, I think it's a groovy page. Now once again, shooting back and forth, back to Magnus and Cliff Steele. There's continuing to banter back and forth. The takeaway from this page specifically is the guy cutting himself down in the bottom corner and rambling about what appears to be nonsensical, talking about the Scissormen. And spoiler alert, the Scissormen end up being a real thing. And however, he is, you know, completely ignored, being a crazy person, because that's what happens when, you know, mentally unstable people tend to get ignored. Oh, and from there, Will Magnus says, you know, he's like, I'm tired of you feeling bad for yourself. You need to like get over it and move on. There's people that have it worse than you. And then Cliff says, well, you know what, go ahead, show me. There's no way that anyone has it worse than I do. I'm a robot man. And that's when we get the introduction of Crazy Jane. And our first introduction to Crazy Jane, she is actually not Jane at the moment. She is the Hangman's beautiful daughter. And she's painting out in the rain. And the painting ends up, through the conversation they're having, ends up coming to life and attacking her. And that's, I guess, the Hangman's daughter can create psychically active arts. I don't know, they'll probably expand on it further down the line. But I really like the big takeaway from this, again, as far as the character development goes, is Crazy Jane's breakdown. And she says, what do normal people have in their lives? What do normal people have? He's like, I'm tired of being like, I've tried being like them, I really have. But what happens when you just can't be strong anymore? What happens if you're weak? And then she says, you know, my painting's ruined, everything's gone wrong. And I think that the painting and the way she feels and her experience with trying to you know, be normal. And I think a lot of people probably reach a point like that where they feel like they've, you know, made this beautiful painting, they work so hard to do it, and then something will happen, and so easy to feel like all of that work has just been erased. And I don't know, I really like the way they told that in this. And then finally it brings us to the ending of this comic, and it takes a car crashing into the side of a bus, and there's a man that gets out of the car crash, and he's holding a black book full of black pages, and he's on fire, and what is he saying? And he's rambling about the Scissormen, and he's holding that, and this is a direct parallel from the beginning of the book with Cliff's car crash. Is Cliff's car, so now I'm wondering if Cliff's dream was not itself predictive of this scene here, and in turn is that you know, the mental health facility then ground zero for the Scissormen and whatever event occurs with that, as there are two people that have had predictive notions in that area. And then you kind of get the idea at the end, the two agents talking about the case, you know, tell you basically that this is going to be a job for the Doom Patrol to solve. And that's the end of issue number 1. Hopefully I will be able to talk about issue number 2 tomorrow, and I look forward to going on this journey with you. Thank you. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts and such. Bye.